I walked into the Reed family home with a smile, carrying the food I had spent hours preparing. It was Thanksgiving, a day meant for love, warmth, and family. I expected hugs at the door, laughter from the kitchen, and the familiar smell of roasted turkey. But as I stepped inside, everything felt wrong. The house was cold and silent. No voices, no music. Just one person, Arthur Vance, my husband Ethan's stepfather, sitting alone in the dim living room. I put the food down and asked, "Where is everyone?" Arthur didn't say a word. He simply pointed to the table. There was a folded note with my name on it. I opened it with shaking hands. It was from Ethan. Just a few lines. He said he had gone on a Caribbean cruise with Chloe, his ex-girlfriend, and his mother, Diane. They had left me behind, without telling me, without a call or warning. The note ended with one sentence that stung the most. "Take care of Arthur until we're back on Monday." I stood there, frozen, reading it again to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Then I checked his Instagram. My stomach twisted. Pictures of Ethan, Diana, and Chloe laughing on a beach, holding cocktails, captioned with #NewBeginning. I opened our bank app next. The savings were gone. Over $5,000, drained without my knowledge. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, heartbreak, betrayal. I sat next to Arthur, not sure what to say, but he spoke first. His voice was calm, almost tired. He said he knew about the cruise. He knew about Chloe. He knew everything. He told me he wasn't surprised. Then he said something that broke me even more. He had only 3 months left to live. I looked at him, stunned. He shared how Ethan and Diana had been neglecting him for years, missing his doctor appointments, giving him watered-down meds, even stealing from his account. He said he hadn't expected much from them anymore, but he didn't want to go without doing something wrong. I listened in silence as he spoke. He wasn't bitter, just disappointed. He said if I helped him in his final days, if I stood by him while the others abandoned him, he would leave everything to me. Not just out of gratitude, but because it was right. He had property, hidden savings, things they never cared to ask about. He said he didn't want them to benefit from his death. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up thinking of everything. Ethan's betrayal, Diana's coldness, Chloe's smug smile in the photos. But mostly I thought about Arthur, a dying man who deserved better. I came for Thanksgiving, expecting family. But I was left with truth, silence, and an old man no one wanted. And somehow I knew I wouldn't walk away. I sat on the edge of the guest room bed, phone in hand, still trying to understand what had just happened. My fingers trembled as I logged into our joint bank account. I stared at the numbers, hoping I was seeing it wrong. But it was all gone. Every cent. Over $5,000 we had saved vanished. I scrolled through the recent transactions and saw it clearly. Cruise bookings, resort payments, airline tickets, all under Ethan's name. He had used our savings to take Chloe, his ex, on a vacation. On Thanksgiving. With his mother. I couldn't stop myself. I opened Instagram. I went to his profile. There they were, bright photos of sun, sand, cocktails, and forced smiles. Ethan had his arm around Chloe, while Diana stood beside them holding a drink. Hashtags like #NewBeginnings and #FamilyTime made it work. The people who left me behind were on a beach, celebrating together. And they wanted me to babysit Arthur, the one they didn't even care about. I turned off my phone, too disgusted to keep scrolling. My heart wasn't just broken, it felt insulted. Used. Like I didn't matter at all. I walked slowly back to the living room where Arthur still sat. He looked tired but calm, as if he had been waiting for me to find out the truth on my own. "I saw the pictures," I said quietly. He nodded. "You already knew, didn't you?" Arthur didn't flinch. "I knew he was planning something," he said. "Chloe's been calling for weeks. I heard bits and pieces. I'm old, not deaf." He leaned back and folded his hands on his lap. "Diana never thought I noticed, but I did. The phone calls, the quiet arguments when they visited, the way she handled my pills." He looked at me, his eyes clearer than before. "This cruise was just the final straw. They've been neglecting me for years." I didn't know what to say. I had always thought Ethan's family was a little distant, maybe cold. But neglect? He explained how his prescriptions were often half empty, appointments skipped without telling him, and small amounts of money disappearing from his account. He thought he was imagining it at first. But then it kept happening, again and again. And Ethan, his own stepson, just looked the other way. Diana always had an excuse. Busy. Forgot. Didn't see the reminder. Arthur stopped asking after a while. "It's not just about being old," he said. "It's about being invisible. That's what they made me feel like." My throat tightened. I had come here thinking this would be a short weekend. Just Thanksgiving dinner, a few polite smiles, and we'd head back home. Instead, I was standing in a house where everyone had quietly decided Arthur didn't matter. And now I was the one left behind. Arthur looked at me with something between sadness and understanding. "You didn't deserve this," he said. "But neither did I." I sat beside him again, this time with no words. Just silence. A silence we both understood. Arthur waited until the room was quiet again before speaking. The television was off, my phone face down on the table, and the weight of everything hung between us. Then calmly he said, "I'm dying." I looked at him, unsure if I'd heard right. But he wasn't looking for sympathy. His voice was steady, as if he'd rehearsed the words 100 times in his head. 3 months, maybe less, he added, lifting his hand slightly before letting it fall. Lung cancer. Late stage. Nothing more they can do. The silence thickened. My mind struggled to process what he'd just said, but Arthur had already moved on. He reached for a faded folder tucked beside the couch and placed it on the table in front of me. It was old, worn, filled with papers, photos, receipts. Without saying anything, he opened it and showed me the pages one by one. I saw prescription labels with dates and dosage changes, notes scribbled on doctor appointment cards, then bank slips, all showing strange withdrawals over the past year. Small enough not to raise alarm, but frequent. He even had photos of pill bottles, some only half full. They never thought I'd notice, he said. But I did. I just pretended not to. He had tracked everything quietly. Names, dates, amounts. Missed appointments. Times Diana promised to take him to the doctor, but never showed. Days Ethan said he'd check in but didn't. I wanted proof, Arthur said. Not just stories. Then he looked straight at me. I don't want them to benefit from my death. I didn't know what to say. I was still trying to catch up. But Arthur continued, speaking slowly, clearly. He said he had money. Real money. Not in the family's name. Not in any account they knew about. There were offshore holdings, some savings in Vermont property, and more he'd gathered over the years. Quiet investments, smart ones. No one cared enough to ask what he did before he got sick. They assumed he was just a burden. They wanted me out of the way, he said. Fine. I'll leave, but not how they expect. Then came the part one didn't see coming. He asked for my help. He wanted me to stay. Help him gather the rest of the evidence. Organize it. Document everything. And when the time came, ensure his will was carried out the way he wanted. They abandoned me, he said. But you stayed. His voice didn't shake. There was no anger, just clarity. If you help me do this right, everything I have goes to you. Every cent. Every property. Everything. I stared at him, heart pounding. Not because of the money, but because of the trust. The weight of what he was asking wasn't small. This wasn't revenge. It was about making things right before he ran out of time. You don't have to decide now, he said, leaning back with a tired breath. But I'd rather not face this last part alone. And just like that, we weren't strangers anymore. We were 2 people left behind, ready to stand together. The next morning, Arthur was already at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. His papers were spread out again, more organized this time. He looked up and gave a small nod, as if silently asking, "Are you still with me?" I nodded back. That was all he needed. We got to work immediately. We started by sorting everything. I labeled folders while Arthur recalled dates and details with impressive clarity. We arranged the bank statements in order, marked each withdrawal he didn't authorize, and flagged medical bills that were never paid. I dug through his files for hospital discharge summaries and appointment slips. Every detail mattered now. The truth had to be airtight. Arthur had kept a lot more than I expected. Emails between him and doctors. Voicemails Diana never returned. A copy of a missed specialist referral buried in unopened mail. He even had a small notebook filled with notes. Dates he was left alone, pills that went missing, meals he never got. Some pages were shaky, but still legible. We needed more. I stepped outside that afternoon and went next door to speak with Mrs. Davies. She opened the door before I even knocked, as if she had been waiting. When I mentioned Arthur, her eyes softened. "That poor man," she sighed, then invited me in. She'd seen plenty over the years. Arthur sitting on the porch in the cold, waiting for someone who never came. Diana's car speeding off after short visits. She remembered one afternoon when Arthur fell trying to carry groceries alone, and no one from the family came to check on him for days. She agreed to write a statement. So did another neighbor across the street. We now had witness accounts that painted a clear picture. Arthur wasn't just forgotten. He was abandoned. That evening, Arthur called his lawyer, Eleanor Shaw. She arrived the next day, sharp-eyed and quiet. Arthur introduced us, then explained everything clearly. No confusion, no hesitation. He told her exactly what he wanted. A new will, full power of attorney transferred to me, all assets secured away from Diana and Ethan, and his medical care protected. Eleanor asked questions, wrote fast, and nodded often. She didn't show much emotion, but I could tell she was moved by how prepared Arthur was. We walked her through the folders. She read everything with care. Then she leaned back, met Arthur's eyes, and said, "You're doing the right thing." Arthur smiled faintly. "Took me long enough. The process took hours." She reviewed each document, asked for clarification, and explained the legal steps in simple terms. She scheduled a notary for the following week and told us what else we needed: more dated witness accounts, backup copies of financial records, and one final video message from Arthur in case anything was challenged later. Arthur agreed to it all. By the time she left, our plan was in motion. Everything we'd collected was no longer just scattered pieces. It was a case. A strong one. And for the first time since I'd stepped into that house, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel: hope. Arthur looked tired but satisfied. "They thought I wouldn't notice," he said quietly, more to himself than to me. "But I did. And now, so will the world." Arthur and I sat in the living room, the lights dim, the mood quiet. The work we had done so far had built the foundation, but now it was time to show the world, especially his family, what they had chosen to ignore. The truth wasn't just in document. It needed to be felt, seen, undeniable. And for that, we had to let them believe the consequences of their absence were unfolding in real time. Arthur nodded when I brought it up. Let them watch what they walked away from. We ordered a second-hand oxygen tank, some old hospital props, and rented a portable heart monitor. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to make it real. Arthur's acting, surprisingly, needed no effort. He didn't exaggerate or fake it. He simply sat still, slower than usual, quieter. His body already carried the wear of illness. He just stopped hiding it. I set the stage around him carefully. The oxygen tube looped around his ear. A monitor beeped softly on a table beside him. An extra blanket over his knees. A few pill bottles within reach, untouched. He looked like someone who had been left alone for too long. I stood in the hallway and took a short video. Arthur stared blankly ahead, his hands slightly trembling. I sent it to Sophie, Ethan's sister, with no explanation. Just the video. Then I followed with a simple text. "He's not doing well. I've been trying to reach them." No answer. A few hours later, I sent another clip. Arthur coughing quietly, eyes closed, the beeping a bit louder this time. The house looked colder in the shot, lonelier. I waited a full day before calling Ethan. I left a message, voice shaking, breath heavy. "Ethan, please call me back. Arthur's getting worse. I don't know what to do. He's asking for you. I've tried everything. Please." Then I hung up and stared at the phone. Nothing. No response. Not a missed call. Not a message. So I called again the next morning, then the next night. I made sure each voicemail was saved, recorded, backed up. The silence from their side was louder than anything I could say. Arthur watched me work and never said much, but I could tell it mattered to him. "I used to believe they'd come around," he said one, "that they just needed time. But time came and went." A few neighbors dropped by during those days. I let them see Arthur in his staged condition, never saying it was fake, but never confirming it either. They brought food, offered prayers, one even teared up. All of them asked, "Where's the family?" I just gave a sad smile and shrugged. More photos followed. Arthur staring out the window, resting in bed, looking smaller each day. I even sent a video of me holding his hand, whispering, "They're coming, Arthur. They'll be here soon," with no reply from him. The silence continued. Every piece was falling into place, not to create pity, but to reflect the reality they ignored. They had left him, and we were simply holding up a mirror. Arthur looked at me one evening and said, "They'll see it when it's too late." I nodded, because that's what they deserved. Not lies, not dramatics, just the truth they chose not to see, playing out in real time, while they sipped cocktails miles away. Mrs. Davies knocked softly one morning, holding a warm casserole in her hands and concern in her eye. She had seen the lights on late at night, noticed me walking Arthur out to the porch slowly, helping him sit in the sun. She didn't ask questions. She just looked at Arthur, nodded gently, and said, "He was always good to my Henry. Let me help however I can." I thanked her, but before she left, she placed her hand on mine and said, "I've seen things I've never said out loud." That was the moment it changed. She sat at our kitchen table that afternoon, the food forgotten. She spoke about the many times she'd seen Arthur alone, struggling with bags, limping down the driveway to get the mail. No one ever came out to help him. Not Ethan. Not Diana. No one. She had once even offered to drive Arthur to a doctor's appointment after noticing Diana's car parked out front for hours while he waited on the steps. Diana never even came to the door. "I thought maybe I was wrong, or maybe it wasn't my place," she said. "But now I know I should have said something sooner." I asked if she'd be willing to tell a lawyer what she saw. She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. He deserves better than what they gave him." Word began to spread quietly among the neighbors. I didn't ask for it, but somehow they came on their own. An older couple from across the street came by one evening. They remembered the time Ethan yelled at Arthur on the... Another neighbor, a retired nurse, said she noticed Arthur's medicine was never picked up on time. She worked part-time at the pharmacy. One by one, they all came forward with memories, moments, and proof of silent mistreatment. They weren't just stories, they were patterns. Patterns that showed Ethan and Diana weren't absent out of ignorance. They chose to stay away, even when they knew Arthur needed help. They chose comfort, vacations, and social media smiles while he was left to manage alone. Mrs. Davies became our quiet champion. She made calls, brought neighbors over for coffee, helped collect their written statements. She even found an old video from her doorbell camera showing Arthur falling near his mailbox months earlier, struggling to get back up. No one came for nearly an hour. We compiled everything. Voices that had once been quiet now stood together, steady and clear. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About making sure Arthur's final days were backed not only by legal protection, but by the community that had watched him suffer in silence. Each neighbor became a witness. Each statement a small act of justice. Arthur wasn't alone anymore, and when the time came, their voices would speak for the pain his own family had refused to acknowledge. Arthur was getting weaker by the day. I could see it in the way he held his cup, slower, shakier, and how he stopped asking for the news in the morning. He didn't complain, though. He only asked me once softly, "Are we almost done?" I told him, almost. Just one last thing. That last thing mattered more than anything else. Eleanor returned with a notary, just as we had arranged. The living room was quiet, sun slipping through the curtains as Arthur sat wrapped in a thick wool blanket. He insisted on sitting upright. He wanted to be clear-headed, fully aware, and in control. That mattered to him. Before we began, Eleanor checked all the documents again, medical files, financial statements, the revised will. Arthur's hands trembled slightly as he signed, but his signature was strong. The notary watched, nodded, and sealed everything. Eleanor placed each signed paper into her briefcase like it was gold, because in a way it was proof. Proof of choice. Proof of intention. Proof of love and betrayal, all at once. But it didn't end there. Arthur turned to Eleanor and asked if she had the camera ready. She did. A simple setup, just a small camcorder on a tripod pointed directly at him. No makeup, no stage. Just Arthur in his own home, in his own voice. He cleared his throat and began to speak. Not once did he raise his voice. He wasn't angry. He was steady, almost sad. He spoke about the years he tried to be there for, how he paid for school, co-signed for the first car, even covered Diana's medical bills once, despite their long history of silence. He talked about the loneliness that crept in slowly, especially after his wife died. He mentioned birthdays missed, holidays skipped, and phone calls that never came. And then softly he said, "But what broke me wasn't the silence. It was knowing they were enjoying life while pretending I didn't exist." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "Lily is the only one who stayed. Not for money, not for favor, just because I mattered to her when no one else cared. That's why everything I own, everything I built, now belongs to her. And if Ethan or Diana feel shocked, they shouldn't be. This isn't punishment. It's truth." I stood behind the camera, heart pounding. He didn't flinch once. He didn't ask for sympathy. He simply told the truth, word by word. After the recording, Arthur leaned back, exhausted. But there was peace in his eyes. As Eleanor packed the equipment and the notary signed off on everything, Arthur took my hand and gave it a small squeeze. "That was the last thing," he whispered. I nodded, blinking back tears. It was. The letter, the video, the will, it was all complete. Now there would be no confusion, no legal games, no twisted claims from Ethan or Diana. Arthur had made himself clear. He may have been weak in body, but in that moment, Arthur Vance was stronger than ever. That night, the house felt strangely calm. The legal weight had been lifted. There was no more pretending, no more filming, no more hiding. Arthur sat by the fire in his favorite chair, the same chair his wife used to knit beside, and asked me to bring out the bottle he had been saving for decades. It was tucked away in the back of the cabinet, sealed and untouched, still dusty from years of waiting. "It was for our 50th, he said softly, "but I don't think I'll make it there. So, tonight, let's open it anyway." He didn't ask with sadness. He asked with acceptance. I poured 2 small glasses. He raised his slowly, nodding at me. "To the ones who stay," he said. I clinked mine against his, and we both took a sip. It was warm, rich, and deep, like memories. He smiled faintly, and for a long time we didn't talk. We just sat there in the soft crackle of the firelight. Later, I helped him into bed. He insisted on brushing his teeth, changing into the pajamas his late wife had bought him years ago. I tucked the covers up around him, and he said, "You were the only one who saw me, really saw me." I sat beside him for a while, holding his hand as his breathing slowed. He didn't ask for prayers or regrets. Just peace. In the morning, the house was silent. I knew before I even stepped into his room. Arthur lay still, his face relaxed, no pain, no struggle. Just gone, like a candle burning out gently. I stood there for a while, not crying, just breathing. Then I got to work. I made calls. First to Eleanor, who promised to contact the authorities and handle the documentation. Then to Mrs. Davies, who came with warm arms and tears in her eyes. She helped me call the neighbors Arthur had known for years, people who had waved at him from porches, but rarely got the chance to speak deeply. This time, they came without hesitation. The funeral was held 2 days later, quiet and simple. I dressed Arthur in the same suit he wore at his wedding, which he had saved neatly in plastic. There were no flowers from Ethan, no messages from Diana. But the neighbors brought their stories. One brought a photo of Arthur fixing her fence in the rain. Another recalled him mowing her lawn after her surgery. A boy, now grown, said Arthur had taught him how to ride a bike when his own father left. The chapel was modest but full. No loud speeches, no forced grief. Just people who came because Arthur had mattered to them. And that mattered to me. I gave a small eulogy, simple words, spoken with a steady voice. He didn't need many. Just one who stood beside him. After the burial, we shared coffee and pastries in the church hall. People stayed longer than expected, talking about Arthur, asking more about his life. They didn't just mourn him, they honored him. And I made sure every part of it was exactly as he would have wanted. No lies, no performance. Just dignity, presence, and truth. He had left this world quietly, but not alone, not forgotten. They walked in like they owned the world, suitcases rolling, sunglasses still on, skin red from days in the sun. Laughter echoed through the hallway as if nothing had changed, as if no one had died. I stayed silent, standing at the end of the corridor in black, waiting for them to notice. It took a moment, but when Ethan's eyes finally met mine, his smile faded. "Where's Arthur?" he asked, setting his bag down casually. "He passed," I said calmly. The room went still. No tears. No shock. Just confusion. Diana furrowed her brows. Chloe glanced at Ethan, clearly unsure of what to say. Sophie whispered, "When?" "2 nights ago," I replied, then stepped aside to let them enter the dining room. On the table, I had laid everything, neatly, carefully. The envelope containing Arthur's letter. A stack of labeled folders filled with photos, call logs, screenshots, receipts, and medical documents. At the center, a flash drive plugged into a small laptop. I motioned to the chair. "Sit." They did, hesitantly, sensing something heavy coming. I handed the letter to Diana first. She opened it and read silently. Her lips tightened. Her hands trembled, but she said nothing. When she finished, she passed it to Ethan. The words were short but sharp. Arthur had poured his disappointment into every sentence, not yelling, not accusing, just stating the truth. He saw what they had become, and he no longer wanted them to have any piece of him. Then I hit play on the video. Arthur's face filled the screen. His voice was steady. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And you didn't come back in time. Not that you tried. I trusted you once, Diana. And you, Ethan. But you left me. You ignored the signs. You ignored me." He paused. Lily didn't. He explained it all. How long he'd been neglected. How they took his money, skipped his appointments, lied to doctors. He spoke clearly, naming each of them. Then he said it plainly. "My estate, my home, my savings. Everything goes to Lily." The room erupted. "That's not legal," Diana barked. "You manipulated him," Chloe accused, pointing at. Ethan just stared at the screen, speechless. I reached for the final folder. "These are the statements, the call recordings, the videos of your absence when he was in pain. Neighbors who saw. Messages I sent that you never replied to. All of it. This isn't just about inheritance. It's about what you did and what you didn't do." Sophie stood, trying to say something, but I cut her off. He waited. He begged. "You left." No one responded. The weight of it all had landed. I looked at Ethan one last time. He died with dignity, surrounded by people who cared. And you weren't one of them. Then I turned, walked upstairs, and shut the door behind me, leaving the sound of their silence to echo through the house they thought they'd come home to. Eleanor Shaw arrived exactly on time, calm as ever, carrying a leather briefcase and the final blow to their fantasy. She walked into the living room where Ethan, Diana, Chloe, and Sophie sat frozen, surrounded by the evidence they had hoped to ignore. "I'm here on behalf of Arthur Vance," she began, her voice firm. "As per his legally signed and notarized will, all his assets, including this house, his Vermont property, offshore accounts, and remaining investments, have been left entirely to Lily Chen." Diana stood, shouting, "This is insane. That house is mine." "No," Eleanor cut in. "The house was held in Arthur's private trust. You were never listed. And based on the documented evidence of abandonment and financial neglect, the court upheld his right to disinherit you all." Chloe opened her mouth, but Eleanor continued without pause. "The accounts are frozen. You won't see a cent." Ethan stood, visibly shaking. "Lily, please. You don't have to go through with this." Chloe convinced me. "I didn't mean to." I didn't flinch. I pulled my wedding ring from my finger and dropped it in his open palm. Then I placed our apartment keys next to it. "You left him to die," I said softly. "Now you get nothing, including me." His face crumpled, but I didn't wait to hear what came next. I turned and walked out the front door as Eleanor remained behind to finalize the transfer. Outside, the sky was clear. I slipped into Arthur's old car, now mine, and drove away without looking back. Not as a victim, not as a wife, but as a woman who had stood her ground and found justice where it mattered most. Do you think I was right to walk away and leave Ethan with nothing after everything he did? Or do you think he deserved another chance? I'd really love to hear what you would have done in my place. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like mine, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video.